What a fight. And I have just finished watching Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 3. The trilogy is now complete. And my mind, I'm crazy right now. Like, what a fight. I mean, the way that Deontay got knocked down in the third round, he was doing so well, and then he got knocked down, and we thought it's over. And then Tyson getting knocked down twice in the fourth round, and it completely changing. And then Deontay getting absolutely, one-sided beatdown, and continuing to keep on coming forward, and then blitzing Fury at the end of the sixth or seventh round. And, so many unexpected twists and turns. I was literally on the edge of my seat. I'm gonna say some bold statements, guys. I'm gonna say some bold statements, and you're gonna listen. 1, this was the best boxing fight of 2021. Better than Usyk versus Joshua. Better than Canelo versus Billy Joe. Certainly better than any of the YouTube fights. This was not a one. Yes, this was a one-sided beatdown towards the end. But Deontay Wilder, man, you don't need to feel slighted or you feel like you lost. Because if anything, Wilder was the one that took the W tonight. Here's the thing. No one thought this fight was going to go past 5 rounds. Everyone thought this was going to be a repeat of the second fight with Tyson Fury dominating and Wilder getting knocked out Nate Robinson style. And he did, but in the 11th round. And before, okay, you know what, I have so many thoughts and so many things, but I'm just going to say the bold statements and then we'll get into the fight. But yeah, I definitely do think this was a tough, competitive fight. There was not one boxing fight that I can name from just, my memory where it's been a 12-round fight or an 11-round fight, and it's kept you engaged, on the edge of your seats, completely invested for the entire time. That does not happen in most boxing fights. Every single round, people were on the edge of their seats. I was literally, on the edge of my seat the entire time. I was like, what is gonna happen next? It was like watching, a thriller, watching a horror movie, but it was boxing. If every boxing fight was like this, boxing would be in a so much better, it'd be on top of the sporting world. These two guys were going in there with one mission, and that's I'm either dying or I'm winning. Pure and simply, Wilder was not afraid to get hit with big punches and stay in there and continue to land punches on Fury. Fury was not affected by Wilder's punches. He was not afraid to get hit with them, and he was certainly almost always ready to get up and continuing to throw. These two guys were in it to the minute. These guys were not afraid of each other, and that is something we don't see. There's always one guy that's afraid or that's not as equally as skilled, and while Tyson Fury was technically miles above Deontay Wilder, Wilder still brought it. Let's break down the fight a little bit. So I think that Deontay Wilder, for starters, I didn't say this publicly, but I said this to people like Angel and Strike, is that I always knew that Deontay Wilder was going to be technically the best we've ever seen him. And I don't know if you'd say that, I don't know if that's a bold statement to make, but I definitely do think he was the best from a technical standpoint compared to the past 2 fights. When he came out in the first round, he came out with the jab to the body. He was really using the jab quite well. He was taking his time, being very technical about it, and it worked. Deontay Wilder won the first couple rounds in this fight up until round 3 when he got knocked down. And round 2 was more decisive. I think Wilder won the first 2, and then Tyson came back with the third round, and then I think Wilder won the 4th, and then 5 and 6 were up for debate, I think, and then 7 through the end was pretty much Tyson's fight to win. I saw from his ring, from the walk he did, I just saw the energy, the facial expressions. He seemed off, and he even said this wasn't his best performance, and he said that he kind of felt a little off, and he looked it. He looked almost maybe nervous, maybe the nerves of having to defend the belt and having all these delays and having COVID and his child almost dying, and I think that people have stated in the past year his behavior has gotten a bit more erratic. I think he personally maybe underestimated Wilder, and I think he came in a little too heavy, and I think he was just a little too confident, but I also think that he was a little bit nervous going into this fight, and I think just from gouging some reactions, this was definitely Tyson Fury's weakest performance against Deontay Wilder. thus far, in my opinion. For a good chunk of the fight, he would kind of reposition himself from doing hooks and wild shots and going back to the jab and going back to coming in with that and going to the body. And that's when Deontay Wilder was working and doing the best and winning. People are going to criticize his weight. I think his weight was, I think it actually favored him, because he definitely, when he got tired, he was able to clinch more and take Tyson's weight better. And I think that the extra weight added some more oomph to his power. So I definitely do think that was a positive, but I think he could have maintained the weight and maybe been a little bit slimmer. And I think he would have done better, because you could tell that he got more tired going into the later rounds. Tyson just seemed a bit like unable to put together his game plan, because his trainer was like yelling at him in the corner, "Tyson, it's the easiest thing, jab, jab," and Tyson was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to." Like, Tyson was struggling to execute his game plan and do what he was supposed to do. And I think that's one, because of the nerves and because of his tired and his weight and everything. I also think he was a little demoralized, like just as Deontay Wilder was a little bit, I think, demoralized after he knocked out Tyson in the first fight, and he got right back up and honestly won that last round. Tyson was hitting Deontay with the biggest punches, putting all of his effort, and Deontay was still there and was still willing to engage with him and hit him hard and throw and land shots that could still knock him out. Like in the 7th round, at the end of the 7th, 8th, whatever round, Tyson won that round, and then Deontay just came back with these huge punches, and if that round had gone on for another minute, he would have gone in a knockdown. Wilder would have. So I think Tyson kind of realized he was dealing with a different Deontay Wilder. There was not one other boxer in the heavyweight division, or in any boxer, who could take the punishment that he did and survive for 11 months. Like, everyone was saying, how is he still up? He had his Tyson Fury moment where, Tyson was absolutely KO'd and he got back up. And that was Deontay Wilder, but for 11 rounds. In my book, people thought Deontay Wilder was weak, that he was done in for, that he was no longer a threat. The fear around him was completely dissembled, was completely gone away. Now it is back, because people know that this guy has a chin, whereas before we felt like he didn't. Now we know that he has a chin, that he is a dog, that he is a warrior, and that he has that knockout power, and he's actually developing more as a technical boxer. And I think a fight with AJ, which should be his retirement fight, and I think that's a fight he can win pretty comfortably, along with having more time to improve, because that fight won't happen for a while, would be a great way to send off Deontay Wilder. But he, in my eyes, redeemed himself. And if he does not want to box again, he obviously took another L, but he's still going to be remembered. And these two guys are going to be remembered as warriors, as champions, and people are going to look favorably on Wilder and Fury. And in my eyes, they both cemented themselves. Deontay Wilder would have gone to the end of the fight and maybe could have won if he had better defense and better head movement. There was the same thing that happened in the second fight, where he would get clinched up and he would be all over the place. His hands would be everywhere. His head would be exactly where my head is, and he would just take all this punishment. And that's ultimately why he ended up on the ground. Because if you see the video, if he just ducked his head around or put up his gloves, he wouldn't have gone and knocked down. And this was the biggest thing that Deontay did not work on, was his defense and his head movement. I think if he worked on that insanely well, maybe we could have had a 4th fight, or maybe he could have survived. And he never took a round off, and I think he should have, and he took too much punishment. And again, if he had better defense and head movement, it would have gone to the end of the fight, and maybe he would have gone in a unanimous decision L. But I also think he could have made another, and he had many second wins, and I think that he could have knocked out Tyson Fury still and won this fight. Hopefully, I've got my points across. Make sure to like, sub, and comment. Yeah, Bomb Squad.